that is due finals week, like I said, I think last week, is in the finals week folder. So there's a bunch of different things. One of them is the demo reel. So that is basically, I think all of you guys were required to make these last quarter. It's basically just a work in progress of at least part of your animation. So basically just take one or more parts of the final that you personally worked on and animated, and it's, again, just do the kind of work in progress shot for this. The actual requirements, just split your screen into 4. This should still be like 1920 by 1080. Split your screen into 4 and show the storyboards cut together so they sync with your animation. Your reference footage should be as synced as you can get it. And then a block-in pop through rough animation, sort of work in progress, and the final rendered animation. I will throw in the note, because I've seen this before a few times, that when I say block-in sort of rough animation, I do mean like actual work in progress stuff like you would be submitting either this week or like last week. Don't just do the thing where you sort of finish animating, take a quick play blast of your final unrendered animation and like put that right next to the render. Again, I am looking for actual work in progress, just to show a little bit better the sort of process that you went through to actually animate this. Minimum length for this should be 5 seconds. I'd recommend doing it longer if you're so inclined. But what that means basically is if you have, a 2-second clip that you feel super strongly about, supplement that and just cut together another sort of work in progress clip for that as well. Does that make sense? Cool. Points breakdown, it's worth 3 points. A lot of it is just sort of have you put in all the stuff that was required. And things I'll be looking specifically for is, again, is the work in progress animation actually work in progress animation? And are your storyboards kind of logically integrated, or is it just like one still image just like hanging out there for 30 seconds? What to submit? Basically just a compressed video of the demo reel. That's pretty much the demo reel. Any questions on that before we punk into other things? All right. So other things that are due, there's 2 submissions for the final itself. One of them is the final indie, which is basically, it was like for the work in progress animation that I had you guys submit last time, you did a version where it was just the parts you worked on and then a combined version. The final indie is just the parts you worked on. So this is what I'll be looking at to grade animation. I'm having you break it down separately just so it's easier for me to actually tell who did what. And again, this is just pretty much a video of only the parts of your final that you worked on. The final for the group is all of the stuff cut together. This should be the cohesive animation. This is a group project, so only one of you needs to submit this. The indie animation you do all need to submit individually. But this is what I'll be looking at for sort of the overarching grade of like how does everything work together, like how's the story, do the models and all that stuff feel integrated. That's the final indie versus group. Any questions on that? Cool. Room models and textures, and I also realized lighting. I thought I made docs for them specifically, but apparently I did not. So what I'm probably going to do is make a doc for them and just combine the room models and textures themselves into one. Basically like one assignment, sort of share both grades and then also tack in lighting in there as well. I will send out an announcement whenever I get a doc up for that. What I'm probably going to have you guys do is just do some basically nice shots of your scene. Throw me a Maya file, have like your scene lit and textured and all that good stuff, and just take a few render angles that you feel like show off your scene or particular aspects of your scene that you're really proud of. And the robot texture is, the reason I'm going over this one, like I said, I had a few people ask about it, so I do just want to go over like 1 or 2 of the requirements for that assignment. Your texture should be a little bit realistic. Like if you want to sort of tend towards more stylized, that's fine, as long as you sort of adhere to the technical requirements for the texture. At a base level, there is an expectation that the robots will have some kind of texture maps on them, and they're not just going to be like Lambert's or default AI surface shaders. And that any kind of texturing that you do on your robot isn't going to have super crazy obvious seams on it. So from a, again, baseline technical aspect, that's what I'm looking for. And then requirements specifically, again, use more than basic shaders, and include extra maps in your stuff. So stuff like specular, bumper normal maps, metal maps, that kind of thing. And this is basically, again, just because even if you're going for really stylized textures, there's ways to do that so it looks polished and realistic. I think I have like one example in my mess of example textures up here that doesn't do that, and I'll sort of show you or like tell you why that would work and like what you'd be shooting for if you really don't want to do extra maps. But basically this is just going to be in terms of the actual requirements of like what to submit kind of thing. It's going to be a rendered turntable of your posed robot. So just put him in some kind of pose that you think is, makes sense with his personality. I would say, so as much as I love getting robots that are like dabbing and just being generally goofy, I would say maybe try to do something a little bit more professional if you're shooting to use this as a portfolio piece. Otherwise, I'll have to like re-render it. Again, I personally don't care, just like a weird 2 cents on that. But have your robot lit and rendered nicely, again, turntable, and then do at least 3 little sort of glory shots of your robot, highlighting areas that you're really proud of. So maybe some scratches you think turned out really nicely, or just like random areas of detail. These do not need to be full body shots. And I am probably going to get rid of at least most of this particular requirement. I realize that not everyone combined all their robot UVs into like 1 or 2, and I don't really want 800 like UVs for every single finger. That would be awful. But yeah, so that's, pretty much what to submit. In terms of the actual grading of this, it's worth 8 points total, so 2 points of this is going to be, does the texture of your robot somehow enhance the model feel, or like give you sort of insight into the robot's background, how it was made, where it's been existing. Crazy Wild West robot is going to look a little bit different than like a super futuristic robot that's been like kept in a nice house. And then also just in terms of like, does the material, feel like what it should? Is it obvious that something is paint versus metal, or like, does everything sort of look like a weird generic Lambert? You can't really tell what it is. The rest of the points are for texture quality itself, mostly based on the sort of technical aspects of the texturing. So somewhere around 1 to 3 points is going to be kind of unfinished textures. You haven't met the requirements for having, multiple maps for things, or you've literally just left everything as like a default AI surface shader, that kind of thing. Median grade is you're looking for sort of decent textures. They're scaled reasonably well, but maybe there's some like other obvious technical issues like really weird UV seams, texture stretching here and there, or like your texture's a little bit low res, scaled kind of funky. So basically nice textures, like getting there, just need a little bit more refinement. Higher grades are basically eliminating the technical issues from the sort of medium grades. Does that make sense for the texturing assignment and like what is required for that? Okay, cool. All right, that's pretty much that. Since I did, like I said, I got some people asking, or like having questions about textures, so I figured I'd find some random examples of different assorted textures. Most of these are on Sketchfab, but I tried to find a decent assortment of things that are stylized and realistic and just sort of like cover the bases with this one. So this is like something I would qualify as a little bit more. It's like the weird combination between stylized and realistic, where you have like an outline around the whole thing. It's a clever modeling thing they did to have that render in Sketchfab. But you have like an outline around everything, but you also have like fairly realistic textures in terms of the metal. It's very distracting. In terms of the metal, and you also have like nice scratches and sort of bump maps on the side of this model. Also, one thing, if you guys are ever looking in Sketchfab, there's a really neat thing you can do. If you look at this little model inspector thing down here, you can go through and like look at the wireframe for this robot. Like you can literally see pretty much everything they did to actually build this. So you can see just the model, like untextured model plus any normal maps or bump maps. You can see they have like this little grime here has a little bump map on it. You can also go through and actually look at all of the different textures that they used to actually create this whole thing. So basically look at like all of their texture maps and stuff like that. So if you ever find a particular model, at least on Sketchfab, that you really like, I'd recommend go through, pick through and see how they actually made it. It's kind of absurdly powerful. But again, so you'll notice the outline, the black outline, is actually the duplicated model that's extruded slightly, and what you're seeing is basically the inside of the model as it looks through the back. I'm not explaining that very well. It's not really relevant to your projects, but again, so you can see even though this is like a fairly stylized texture, there is still lots of detail in the individual maps and how they've applied these. They've also done a good job going through and sort of avoiding obvious texture seaming. Like if I'm looking at this, there's nowhere that I'm like, yes, that's a very strange, obvious seam in there. That's kind of my first example. And again, there's different levels of sort of detail within the model. Like obviously this pink area is like pretty realistic with the scratches and stuff like that, and then this gets like really hardcore stylized, and that's totally fine. Like aesthetically, when you're looking at the end piece, it all kind of works together. That's that. This, actually kind of forgot that I had this one in here. Not really a robot or anything super crazy, but it is an interesting example of hand-painted textures. I'm not going to spend a crazy long time on this, but basically this is one of the ones where I mentioned they have, apart from some like emission maps and stuff like that and opacity, they have literally no maps on here except base color or like a diffuse channel. This is done entirely with hand painting. So this is one of the things where if you want to go super handsy and like hand paint a texture like this and do like all the shading and stuff manually, I'm not opposed to that. Just one thing to be aware of, like this works really nicely as a still, but depending on how you paint the texture highlighting in, it might look a little bit weird, like to have these super hot highlights if the character's like walking under a bridge or something like that and it's in shadow and you still have them there. So that's mostly like if you guys ever do hand painting textures in general, that's one thing I would caution against, is like think of how they're going to be used and sort of design your textures around that if possible. Alright. Another random example where the robot is primarily done using diffuse. So there's the whole thing is it's just a color. There's not really any maps for that. But the reason that kind of makes this work is sort of twofold. So to be clear, I am still requiring more than just a diffuse map, but if you are ever doing something like this, what makes this work, even though most of it is just orange, is sort of two things in my opinion. One is the model itself is fairly complex, where you have lots of like little cable details, and you have all of these little details with the screws and like the power stickers and all of that stuff. So that helps, even though the textures are kind of simple, it adds an extra layer of detail and shows that the person was actually like trying to make something decent looking, even if they weren't going for super hyper realistic. The one thing, and you'll also notice they have like little smudgy bits and stuff like that all over here. One thing, so for this particular texture, if you were looking to get in extra maps, I would recommend doing that through a combination. If you could do bump maps, just like really subtle, like poke those little grimes in a little bit more. You could also get some maps for roughness on the screws, and like the sticker could be a little bit shinier and also raised with a slight bump map. And then obviously like a metal texture for the screws, which are clearly metal. But yeah, that's this guy. I also like his antenna. It's like bent really crazy. This thing, yes. This is just like another example of they've gone through and they only have diffuse on this, but they've done it in such a way where it looks like it's sort of textured with like fancier lighting. It looks like they have maps, and again, they put a lot of care into the shading of this. All the shadows are sort of different textures. I don't know. I think this is quite well done. This is another one of those instances though where like if you were to turn this guy around, or if you were to move the source of the lighting the texturing itself kind of breaks down a little bit, which is why I recommend using maps and stuff like that if you're going to move the character around. His eye blinking is very cute. Anywho. So this guy, I'm just going to kind of like run through the rest of them. This would be a decent example, I think, of more realistic textures that also aren't completely awful to create. So whoever made this didn't do a whole lot of stuff with specialized maps and like scratches, but what they have done is created what I think is a fairly successful base texture. And you can see, again, if you're looking at this, there's no real crazy obvious seams in here. So it's a little bit, it's like take a generic internet texture and like really try to fit it to your model so that, you know, again, you don't notice where the seams sort of start and end. And then they've just sort of gone through, everything is pretty metal. The only thing they've really added crazy maps to apart from base color is roughness and the normal maps. But what this gives you in the end is a fairly decent looking robot. It has a lot of character, and they've also gone through and added they've used the normal map as a way to sort of add some extra rivet detail to supplement the model itself. So this would be a decent example if you're just looking for like a relatively not totally insane way to sort of make a textured robot without lots of scratches if you don't want him like looking like he's gotten beat up with a hammer. Another example of hand-painted textures, so the only thing in here is pretty much diffuse and opacity. And again, you can see they've gone through and like added lots of crazy detail, just hand-painted in. I am terrible about doing this, like I suck at this kind of shading, but if this is something that you guys wanted to do for your final, I have no particular opposition to that. Again, I think the reason that this works in this case is, since this is only diffuse, is because they have so much detail hand-painted in. They've like obviously taken a lot of care to sort of recreate the shading manually, so it looks, there's still like obvious effort put in, and it's like obviously refined. And that's kind of what I'm shooting for your guys' stuff, ideally. This is just a funny thing that probably doesn't pertain to any of your guys' stuff, but like I always thought that this was like a cool way to texture. And again, they've done a decent job of hiding texture seams, even though they've literally just scribbled on the entire model like a crazy person. But it's kind of cool. And my personal last and favorite example is the robot chicken. It is delightful. I don't know, this thing is just super cute. But again, this is a good example, I think, probably one of the better ones of, it's a really, really simple model. Like if we just look at this untextured, it's pretty darn low poly, and there's not a lot of detail actually in the model itself. And there's actually not a lot of detail in the texture maps either. But what they do is they use the textures to go in and add tiny details like the screws, and their maps are just sort of accenting that. So if you did want to go with a more stylized texture and not have like any scratches or anything like that, you could totally go through and like add some little screw details. On the normal map, they add the little sort of plates as if thinking of this as like a real object, like how it's been physically attached together and built. They've added these little joints and stuff like that here. So this would be another decent example of sort of ways you could have a stylized texture while also meeting the requirements of the assignment. I really love this model. I could look at it all day. But that's pretty much my bit on texturing stuff. Does anybody have any questions about that? Okay, cool. Well, if you guys have questions in the future, do just let me know. Let me see. All right. Cool. All right. So I guess let's just go into crit, and then after crit, we will do a break, and then probably sim stuff, unless you guys feel really strongly about Substance Painter. So I'm just going to go in the random order that I downloaded these. Ooh, okay. What's the thing for viewing PNGs and stuff? PureRef? PureRef. I always forget what it's called. It drives me nuts that this is like a thing that needs to be done. All right, so I have no idea whose stuff any of this is, so I'm just gonna put some stuff on the screen and yell if it's yours. Second. Sweet. All right, so it looks like you're mostly working on environment texturing stuff. Is there anything we should know before we look at this?
The cactus are now final. They're just placeholders.
Fair enough. I actually, for some reason, I made a squishy silicone cactus, and I've just been carrying that around with me all day. Totally unrelated. All right, cool. So, what's the state of the texturing on this and stuff? Is this sort of like closest to being final, or are you still working on that?
It's almost final. The only thing that's left now is just add a bunch of maps in it to make it look a bit more realistic and just flat.
Mm.
But as of this week, I was able to get like most of like all the final stuff done. With Glacier, I was part of the ones get done, and then the general color scheme for the landscape, which you're pretty happy with.
Gotcha.
It's I would say like 75% done, so probably just add more maps in.
Fair enough.
Pretty much done.
Cool. Then just out of pure curiosity, will you ever see it from an? Is this a face?
Nope.
Okay. Sorry, it looked like just like a weird robot head. Will you ever see it from this angle, or is this just showing the overall?
It's just showing.
Okay.
The work in progress.
Cool. It totally looks like a skate park. But yeah, so I think one thing I would suggest in terms of, I definitely like the let's go back and make this not totally flat. I think that'll help a lot. One thing you could consider for that, if you wanted to just sort of easily combine everything, is take all of this into ZBrush and just do like a Dynamesh on it.
Okay.
It'll mash everything together and give you some topology that you can like sculpt on a little bit, and then it'll just sort of, you can go in if you want. If you don't want the corners of the basin down here, you can just sort of like smooth them out and just really, really quickly make bulk edits that way while still keeping the overall shape that you have. But yeah, so I mean, does anybody else have any thoughts, comments on, I guess, any of the texturing or other random suggestions for lighting, shaping, etc.? Shall I call a random person? Okay, I'm gonna call a random person once I find attendance. Wait for it. Ziad, your name has come up under my random mouse search.
I think the lighting is very successful in terms of having the strong, harsh light. Also, I like the randomness of the tiny rocks.
Yeah, I do actually like the rock. How did you do the rock placement? Is that mash or hand placed? Say again?
I just kind of just know like what looked neat and everything, and just started throwing it in.
Fair enough. I do think I think the HDRI you found is pretty successful for lighting the scene. One thing I might say is perhaps consider popping in like a tiny fill light or something in the background.
Yeah.
Mostly just depending on the angles. Like I think from this one, it's illuminated fine. If you get like this one though, it gets like a little bit sort of hard to see. So you might need to add, even just for this one frame or like this one shot, if this is like an actual angle, just add some like supplemental lighting. Carry this, you have this like really nice sort of highlight here. Pop in some more lights to sort of accentuate that. And then if you're going to use the HDRI in the background, I'd also suggest maybe trying to tweak the sort of colors of this so that it blends a little bit better. But yeah, cool looking environment. I still like all the cacti. Cool. All right, any other thoughts, comments on this one? Excellent. Oh God. Okay, PureRef terrifies me. I will look at Maya files later. Okay, we're just gonna dump it right on top. And whose stuff is this? Is this one of yours? Sweet. All right, cool. And I see you have more cactuses. Okay, I'm just creeping. But yeah, so anything we should know about this before we take a look at it?
I was just trying to fill the room with as much like treats and stuff as possible,
Fair enough.
and that's what I came up with.
Gotcha.
The first picture is not mine though. That's why
Oh, whoops. Okay, well, I guess let's just look at all of these together. So this is the kitchen, and then this is the bedroom, yeah?
yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, since it's here and you guys are in the same group, look at them at the same time. But yes, I mean, you definitely have like a good variety of just sort of stuff on the desk. Is this a screwdriver?
Yeah.
I guess that makes
her
sense, 'cause
hair,
she's a-
like, screws onto her head.
Oh, that's
So
funny.
instead of a hairbrush, she'll have a screwdriver.
Oh, that's so funny. Then I was like, what if she had magnetic hair that just like she upgraded so she could just like pop it in and anyway. But no, I like that you were thinking of like weird stuff like a robot teenager might have in their room. I mean, if that's the case, you could almost do. It might be a little bit heavy-handed. I was gonna say you could also do like little things of oil or something. She could like oil her joints, but that might just look too tinkery and weird at some point. I don't
mean,
know.
If I make it pink, it'll look cute.
Pink oil, ew. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, you can just add little flowers and hearts to everything. But yes, I mean, are you still looking for stuff to add, or are you pretty much like thinking that this is good to be going on with?
Yeah, I still want to work on the dresser
Mm.
and like maybe like something bigger to put in the room. But other than that, I'm pretty much done.
Cool. Yeah, I think one other thing that might be cool. Did you mention at one point covering her wall and like posters of the band she's trying to sing to?
And also like I don't know why the picture isn't showing up, but there's a picture of the bedside table.
Okay,
It
I'm.
has like some albums like on it too, and I'm gonna texture them with the actual albums from the band.
Sweet. It's entirely possible. I have to download all of these manually for doing journals, so I might have just like missed the download for that image. But yeah, I mean, I was gonna say I think like one or two sort of major pieces of furniture would be good. Where is the window, or like where is this in relation to the window that she's jumping out of?
The wall that's like right there.
This one?
It's on the opposite side.
Okay. Okay, cool. So basically like behind the camera from this angle.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha. Cool. You could put like a bunch of like Christmas lights or something in there. Just like pink and yellow Christmas lights. It'd be like lemonade and throw up everywhere. But yeah, cool. I mean, I think this is like pretty solid start to doing a room. I think the pictures and stuff like that will definitely help sort of give that a little bit more life. The other thing you might consider actually is just like a tiny, like some molding along the bottom of the floor.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it'll add like a stupid amount of extra detail when you're looking at it, and it'll help camouflage the seam between the walls and the floor. But yeah, and then I like so I guess moving on to the sort of kitchen stuff. I mean, it seems like you have pretty nice assortment of stuff. I like that you've sort of found other large things. Is this like a bread container?
Yes.
I've heard they actually make bread mold faster.
Yeah. But they didn't know that back then.
Yeah, it's true.
They saw that everything as well.
They will, at a minimum, hopefully keep mice out of your bread, which is a problem that we have. But yeah, I mean, it seems like you have like a nice sort of selection of stuff. Are you shooting for like a retro theme?
Yeah.
Sweet. Yeah, because I'm totally getting retro vibes from this mirror. Okay. For some
It's a clock.
Oh, okay, that makes more sense. I was like, it's either a mirror or a porthole, and the second one makes no sense.
It's like in a boat or something.
Yeah, I'm like, I know they're not on a boat, but like for some reason I was like, it's a porthole. Cool. Was there other stuff for the kitchen that I
Yeah, there are.
missed? Okay, maybe I just didn't download those. There was a Maya file in the vicinity of. Is it this?
I don't know yet.
I'm just gonna pop some random stuff in, see what I get. Do do do. Hey, oh wait, it's a kitchen. Ooh, what is this?
Oh, it's supposed to be like, I don't know what they call it, but it's like that weird corner table that opens and then on the inside it rotates so you can grab whatever you need.
Oh,
start of it.
the like Lazy Susan. Nice,
Yes,
nice, nice. From a functional note, this one wouldn't necessarily work unless the Lazy Susan was smaller. But honestly, I don't care. That is over nitpicking. I know several people with those in their house, and they're usually like in the corner in like a weird diamond-shaped thing, and then it's like, yeah. But anywho, but no, I like that detail. It's like cool. You have a nice selection of sort of like random shelves and like different stuff on the burners and things. Cool. Ooh, and this is like one of those weird like old ovens where they just have drawers in it. That's That's weird. Okay. But yeah. Cool. Any thoughts, comments on this? All right. Yeah.
I like the detail, especially that went onto the oven. I don't know, like especially even like the stove tops, it's like pretty nice touch.
Yeah. I'm a sucker for like well-made ovens and appliances, but yeah, like the burners and stuff look really nice. One. Yeah. I was actually gonna say, so normally I feel like these have, and this is, again, really tiny dumb nitpick. Normally the tops of these will be flat, so you can sit a pot on it, and then they'll have like little feet or something coming off the bottom. But again, that's one of those, if you happen to be bored and have time, otherwise it's probably not a thing that's super worth fixing. Unless you're like zooming in on the oven really close. But yeah, cool. All right, any other thoughts, comments on this one? All right, and just get rid of this. Death. All right, so we did this one. Seems like we have some animations from somebody. If it opens. It's alive! Okay, what? Wait, okay, there we go. All right, so is this?
This is mine. I was trying to fix like some of the camera movement from last week, some of the secondary animation also. I threw in like some other texture, but it is a placeholder.
Gotcha.
I was trying to reference like stuff into my scene too, but it keeps crashing, so I don't have everything in there right now. But
Gotcha. No worries. It definitely looked. I think you did a pretty good job with the. It looks like he worked on the sort of thing where he like rolls down the mountain and then where he gets like launched and he hits it. That I think definitely looks more refined from last week. I like the stuff you've done there. But yeah, anyone else have any thoughts, comments on this one? Shall I call a random person? Calling a random person. Haha. Sarah, do you have thoughts?
yeah, nothing particular. I feel like really well done.
Wait, sorry, can you say that one more time? I couldn't hear you the first time. Yeah. I think both of the robots are like weirdly charming, and they kind of like both sort of work strangely together and like in the environment. But yeah, I mean, it seems like just sort of keep working. I know the stuff that I think you probably spent the most time on is like definitely improved from last week. It seems like there's maybe like one or two little IK pops here and there. I noticed one as he was walking forward in the beginning, and then I think that camera motion felt a little fast to me, like where like the foot slipping I think is nice. I think the motion like right after that, like right here, that feels a little bit fast. So I might look back into that a little bit, just slow him down a tiny bit and maybe make the camera movement a little bit slower as well. And then I feel like when he hits, wait. So I think when he hits here, there should be like a little bit more reaction. So maybe he like bounces off a little bit or something like that. Or again, just like has a little bit more secondary motion, particularly in his legs. It seems like as he's trying to not fall backwards, his legs would be sort of propping himself on the ground, trying to like dig in and like prevent himself falling over again. So that might be a slight change in his actual body position itself. But I do think it's a strange, satisfying animation. Were you planning, I don't know if this is your scene or not, but were you guys actually planning on having him like be visually pulled back in the slingshot thing?
Yeah,
Cool.
That's I believe that's
Your baby?
Yeah.
Sweet. All right, cool.
Yeah,
Alright.
it is. So.
Nice.
Sorry.
No worries. Cool. Any other thoughts, comments on this one? All right. And I don't know. No, I tried to open a PNG. I was gonna try to find yours, then I'm just like, there are too many randomly named files. I don't want to.
Okay.
Hmm? Is this?
I tried to change it to the HDRI because
Mm.
it's only like it's kind of doesn't look too much like an alleyway. Also, I had like a couple trash cans, stuff in the dumpster. I haven't really textured the stuff yet, so basically I'm just using whatever's standard surface shape for like the robots and the
Fair.
dumpster and all that stuff.
Fair
And
enough.
So I was trying to mess with the speculars for some of the stuff, make the ground maybe slightly less glossy,
Yeah, fair enough.
and
Yeah, I see. It does feel a little bit glossy, like right in that area. Is this one of those? Is this one of those like plastic curtains with the like strips of plastic? I don't know how to
it's
say that.
supposed to be like a fence, but I guess if it has a plastic look to it, that could maybe modify it to look more plasticky.
I can see fence. No, I was just. It looks like one of those like things that they have in the supermarket where it's like thick plastic flaps and you have to like walk through them.
Oh yeah.
Again, probably just the angle. But yeah, cool. All right. So does anyone have any thoughts and comments on, I guess mostly lighting and texturing of the non-robot trash can stuff? Is that anyone? Shall I go? So actually, I do. While I'm here, what camera angle will you be using in this? Like, will you ever be seeing off the end of this alleyway?
Not that end, because for most of the stuff, it's either them like walking towards the side, or
Mhm.
it's like focused on them on a dumpster with the building in the background. So-
Right.
But on the other side, the side you can't see, the side you're like looking from, that's supposed to be like blocked off as like a wall or something.
Okay.
But there's not really that many like shots in the actual scene that you see that from like this angle.
Gotcha. That's fair. Yeah, because I was gonna say if you ever see off the background, it might be nice to. I was gonna say block this off of the wall. Maybe put like some kind of fence or something there, and try to like integrate that, because it is definitely a stylistic difference from what you have. But I do think it makes neat lighting in your scene. And I think, I mean, if it were me, I think I would sort of keep going with this, and like I definitely like the addition of like the dumpster and the trash can, stuff like that. I would maybe add some more of that. Think of, if it's supposed to be like a super gross alleyway, you could add some like trash bags somewhere,
Yeah.
swarm of flies.
There's maybe like a couple like just like discarded trash things to be like random like bags of chips or like
Yeah.
other, like other trash you would see like scattered around.
Yeah, like old cups or something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah, I definitely think that's a good idea. You could make like a trash tumbleweed, of just like an old burger wrapper, just like no. But yeah, I mean, I think just sort of keep building out the scene. I would also look at some of the textures again at some point, mostly for scale, particularly in the road and the walls. I think if the scale of that was like shrunken a little bit, it would actually also help with the resolution of those textures as well. This looks like just a generic brick texture, but I kind of like it. Like the way it lines up, it feels kind of sidewalky. And actually, looking at this again, so I'm looking at the differentiation between the sidewalk and the rest of the road.
Yeah.
I think normally, if this is like a standard road where like cars are meant to be, I think normally there'll be like the lip for the sidewalk, or the sidewalk is raised.
Yeah.
To be fair, I don't stare at a lot of like alleys and analyze how the roads are made. It might be cool to sort of bring a little bit of that in for two or three reasons. One, and it could just be literally just grab the middle of this and just extrude it down a little bit and tweak the UVs. It would add a tiny bit of visual interest, but it also, that's an area where a lot of grime and crap usually collects.
Yeah.
And it would also give you the opportunity potentially to add in, if you ever wanted to, like a storm drain or something like that. Which, again, mostly just for visual interest points. And also a good way to sort of have trash collect. The other thing maybe you could consider if you want to, and this is like probably more effort than you want, if you made the roadway really lumpy, you know how if it rains, there's like puddles that collect in the
Yeah.
road?
I don't know how to do liquid and water stuff in
Yeah.
in Maya.
Well, I was gonna say, so again, probably overscoping, and you can totally ignore all this if you wanted to. But if you make, since I have Maya open, if you make a ground and you just make some of it lumpy, like if you, that's not. So if you do something like this,
Yeah.
and you color this blue, it basically creates the effect of a little pond. So what you do is just like have a plane nested under your lumpy ground, and then you could just make that shiny. Again, feel free to completely ignore that. Just a weird suggestion. It can potentially be an easy way to just like make things extra detailed looking without a lot of extra work, but you, again, feel free to disregard. It's actually how a lot of games sort of make water. They just clip planes through other planes. But yeah, cool. Anyone else have any thoughts, comments on this? All right. Moving right along. Dumpster alley trash crawl. Whoa.
This
This-
is a 3-ish second.
Fair. This looks like some kind of really insane synchronized swimming routine. Cool. All right. So any thoughts, comments on this? And I guess this is actually, is this mostly like the angle you're going to be looking at the alleyway from, where it's like
This is like one of the main angles.
Fair. Fair enough. That helps me sort of judge how much of the alleyway will be shown. Cool. So I think one thing that might be cool is, do you have plans for like any like trash or anything like that being sort of like thrown out of here, or?
Yeah, it's actually part of the story where I think like the tomato gets like thrown out.
Nice.
Yeah. That's how the story starts, really.
Gotcha. Yeah, so I mean, I think one thing that might be cool for this, and again, I don't know if you have plans to do this, is just sort of like add a few just sort of like generic dirty trash lumps into here. And then maybe have like 1 or 2 objects being thrown out. I definitely like sort of, I think having it be a tomato works really nicely to set up the rest of the story. I was gonna say make just like a bunch of random items being thrown out so it's obvious like they're looking for something.
Yeah.
But I think if you do too many items in the tomato gets lost in there. So I think that probably the way you have that set up makes sense. But yeah, I think in terms of their actual motion, watch out. Are these both IK legs or FK and IK?
I think one's like FK and one's IK.
Gotcha. This is like the one of the like 4 times when having IK legs will be annoying. But yeah, so I mean, watch out for IK popping on these legs. And I think just like overall, I like you can see their whole body moving. It might. I was gonna say like go bury yourself in blankets or something and try to recreate this. I'm like, that would take a lot of blankets. But it seems like maybe the way they're moving, it feels a little bit, I think, too weightless for the fact that they're supposed to be like buried in trash, if that makes any sense. So I mean, maybe decide like how they're rooting around in here. Normally what I'd expect is sort of them being draped over the side of the trash can and like rooting around. This seems to be more handstanding, which I do think is like really funny, honestly. But it might be good to sort of like plant their torsos and like have their legs, like have their pelvis sort of moving a little bit more and their legs like trying to counterbalance like the way that they're moving. And maybe a little bit more sort of deliberate fashion, if that makes any sense at all. But yeah, cool. Any other thoughts, comments on this? All right. Moving on. More JPEGs. Oh God, they're all on top of each other. No, they're not. Cool. One day I'm gonna figure out how to actually also delete files out of here. All right, cool. Whose stuff is this? Sweet.
I've been having a lot of issues with Patrick.
Gotcha.
We're kind of trying different things out, and that's the last iteration of it.
Fair. So I mean, was there any particular issues you were having, or?
I just think it all, like, I can't think of a color scheme that looks right and also fits the story and like placement of where they're at.
Gotcha. Fair enough. So I mean that feels like a good thing to get people's opinion on. So what your thing takes place in a desert, yeah? That's okay. And then what have you guys decided of sort of like an overall style you were shooting for the robots, or like story or like mood you were trying to capture, or are you just
Not really. There wasn't mapping on the set side thing. We wanted to go like for a very simplistic route, so like when I did push and robot, it was like very simplistic and minimal. Basically always style.
fair? So I think yeah. So I mean I think part of it might help to sort of like decide on a more specific style, but I think I guess I was asking more like it looks like there's almost two different vibes going on in this robot, where like one of them is very sort of like bubblegum fun times. I like this texture. Is this just like a random Damascus steel bump map on some kind of crazy swirl? Fair enough.
It just looks like iridescent stuff.
Ah, gotcha. But yeah, so I mean, I think for me, what's a little bit maybe strange about this is the sort of juxtaposition between this extreme black texture
Yeah.
with an Acme logo on it.
Yeah.
Was that just
That's purposeful.
okay?
Yeah.
This one seems to be upside down, and this one isn't upside down.
Yep, they're all kind of random. I wanted it to look like Shiva had like, you know the things that they use to like stamp cows and stuff?
Oh, branded?
Yeah.
Holy crap! Repeatedly.
Metal, so like,
Yeah, that's fair. So I think what I might do, again, completely personal preference, is I might lighten this up a little bit. It seems like the overall sort of robot is going for a more sort of cutesy vibe, and I think the black coupled with the red eye feels like it's trying to be a little bit more like angry, broody, gothy. And then if you lighten that, it would allow you to also go through and maybe have, if you wanted that brand to sort of show up more, it would allow you a little bit sort of textural leeway to actually have that show up. Now I'm just curious, is there any particular reason you've repeatedly branded her with Acme, or just
that was kind of like our like little hidden type thing where we were like referencing the original, like our inspiration.
ah, gotcha. Cool. You could give her a little tattoo. Just put like a little Acme tattoo like written across the back torso ball, just like right here, or something crazy. But yeah, so I mean, I think I do like the iridescent look. I think also, at least in this particular lighting, the head texture holds up a little bit better, where it's not like super crazy shiny. This one maybe gets a little bit over reflective to a point.
Yeah.
If I have glass marbles that look like this, if that's what you were shooting for, I think you've done a great job. If you're shooting for metal, I think it is maybe a little bit aggressively shiny.
Yeah.
But the bumps and stuff are nice. So I think most of my comments honestly would just be sort of like the shirt, like make the overall sort of style and color a little bit more cohesive. But it seems like the textures themselves are going in a good direction. I'd also watch out for the UV seams on the back of the skirt. Alternately, you could compensate and leave that seam there if you added like a welding mark to it and like deliberately split the UVs and put some like bolts or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, cool. Anyone else have any thoughts, comments on the overall like robot design? Cool. I like her red eye. It's super creepy. Okay, some more animations. All right. Whose stuff is this? Is this Matt? Hello. Oh sweet. Did you get? I guess redid your corrupted frames.
Yeah, there's a
Cool.
few little pieces I'm still trying to touch on that. Obviously, just saying down I have to redo, and then pulling on the wire with the fingers.
Okay.
Obviously, I have to tell Dave I got to clean them up a little bit more,
Yeah.
and then after that, I will have picking up and walking over to a shelf and placing.
Sweet.
So
2/3 of the way on that, and then all my textures I've been sending you the turntables, most of them, from
Okay.
works in progresses.
Oh, sweet. Okay, cool.
I just have chosen not to stick them on because good God, those renders would take forever.
That's fair. I also actually don't need full turntables of anything but your main robot, unless you just want to render them.
I've had them rendered out from previous times I had the texture, so it's just easier
Fair
than
enough.
rendering up and
Yeah.
so.
Fair enough. One thing I would suggest is get a chair in sooner than later. Just
I had a chair block in that I
oh, you just hid.
deleted
Nice.
because I'm gonna be making a school to actually.
Gotcha.
Something I've been noticing a problem with since I couldn't get IFK legs to work on my game. I've been having these FK legs. The legs are sometimes a bit jittery or wobbly whenever I'm trying to get the walking.
Gotcha.
Suggestions for that?
Not so much if you're using FK legs.
Darn it.
When you say jittery, do you mean like actual like stuttering, or is it just like his feet are sort of
It's
like sliding on the
all
ground?
around 'cause
Yeah, I mean my
board it, pulling them instead of
yeah.
foot walk.
I mean there is no good way to do that short of extreme brute force with using FK legs.
Okay.
The only suggestion that I can make is fudge it sort of the best you can, and then find
Don't
camera
show his
angles
feet.
that like hide his feet.
So
but-
what I'm currently doing.
Yeah, fair enough.
Awesome. Okay.
Cool. Yeah, so I guess I like all the little bits of robot scraps. But yeah, so any thoughts, comments on any of the animation? Camera angles are fairly in, or
For the most part, I might be zooming in a bit more on him approaching the desk, and then I'll be having an over the shoulder shot of him leaning over and working on a model, and then yeah.
gotcha. Cool. Yeah, so I guess thoughts mostly on the walk. We went through the robot or the little ladybug guy last week.
Okay.
Everyone was pretty much like, "Whoa, that looks really nice." But yeah, so I think off the top of my head, I still like this a lot. For the actual walk itself, it
Yeah,
seemed
I'm having some trouble with the FK getting it smooth.
yeah.
Just gonna be some general touch up I'm doing still. I'm gonna be going back to grab better across the board. I just want to have something
Yeah.
on it for timing.
That's fair. I mean, so what I was gonna suggest is if you're gonna do the thing where you like don't show the feet, hardcore commit to not showing the feet, and then just push in a lot of additional movement like in the pelvis.
Okay.
So what I would do if I was using FK legs is really get the motion of the pelvis down, and that way you can successfully counter key the legs against that rotation without having to go back and like redo it constantly.
Okay.
So as long as they're kind of pointing straight down, the pelvis motion would give you a lot of sort of extra life to that and allow you to make the upper body look a little bit less stiff, and then just again kind of fudge the legs as hard as you can.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm digging all the cables. He's like a crazy looking dude.
Yeah.
Cool. But yeah, I mean, I guess it pretty much just seems like just sort of keep working. Cool. All right. More animations. All right, David, this one was actually labeled. So anything we should know about this before we look at it, or?
No.
Cool. Is that drawer ever supposed to close?
I wanted it to, but I think something's wrong.
Okay.
I don't really know how to explain it. It's like bound to the chest. I think I bound it to the skin, like along with the chest,
Gotcha.
and it's just really weird. I'll probably figure it out at some point, but it's just not.
Yeah. No, fair enough. Shoot me an email. There's like 2 or 3 different fairly easy ways to do something like that. But yeah, I can go over those later. But yeah, so I guess mostly just looking at the different animations then. Anyone have any thoughts, comments? Or should I call a random person? random person it is. Bye. What's I? Diego.
I'm gonna say that this robot, like just stretching, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's what's happening.
Yeah.
Sure that it's made of specific-
Yeah, I still
This guy.
can't get it, so it just won't like not like stretch.
She's probably like some weight gain.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was gonna actually say, I was gonna make the same comment. So I think it's actually a matter of how you bound the skin. It looks like, so you have like a solid chest piece, and it looks like it has influence on numerous joints, including like the head.
Yeah.
So what you'd want to do is,
Do I have to like completely rework my rig or?
no, it should be a fairly straightforward fix actually. I would unbind most of your skin, and then just rebind it. But if you go into the settings, and you do, instead of doing joint hierarchy, set this to selected joints, and then you should be able to go through, click on the joint and the skin, and do bind skin with the selected joint setting.
Okay.
What that'll do is attach only that skin to only the joint you have selected. So basically, if you're attaching like the chest, it'll only attach to the chest and not to the head and every other thing, and make it squishy. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Sweet.
So which like tab again?
If you just go to like the skin bind skin tab,
Yeah. Okay.
just open that up and do bind to selected joints instead of joint hierarchy.
Hierarchy.
Yeah, that would totally do pretty much what you're having now. But yeah, cool. Any other thoughts, comments? Shall I call in another random person? Haha, I'm feeling evil today. Wait. You just... Joe. Hello.
I would say, whatever he throws in his chest, the pizza or tomato or whatever it is, it looks like it has pretty good movement, but it's a little quicker than the hands. Maybe do like half the motion going up and then just have the box have to follow through.
Okay, so you're saying,
Like he's bringing it up, it has good movement, like
Yeah.
walking down inside it, but like the arms are a little off.
oh, gotcha. Okay. No, I can see that.
So rather than like having the arms like speed up and trying to trail it, rather than like into like
Oh, I see what you're saying. Gotcha.
like solid placement.
That makes sense. I do kind of like the idea of just sort of like being Flip and just like tossing his food into his stomach. That's kind of funny.
Satisfying pat on his belly.
Yeah. And I think that would actually be a fairly easy thing to do. Well, actually, the arms might make it. No, you have little ball joints. So what you could do for that is going through and just take his little wrists, keep the sort of similar motion to what you have, and just like do a little bit of like flick at the end with the wrists, and that'll be the sort of like tossing motion. Cool. I like that as a suggestion. But yeah, so I mean, I think for me, most of it is just sort of like keep going through and keep refining stuff. One thing that might be good is some like additional secondary motion, where it still seems like a lot of the characters, like their torso is completely stationary for most of the animation. So it's always good to go, and it, like again, if you're swinging your head back and forth, that's going to have an effect on the lower body. And then I would also go through. So this might be solved by the time this is like fully rendered and textured and all that good stuff. Right now, I think if I didn't know the story, it wouldn't be entirely obvious what the character's motivation was. Like, this guy's obviously eating something, and then this guy's obviously like, no, I don't want to do a thing. As of now, I'm not really sure what thing he doesn't want to do, or like what this guy is trying to communicate. But again, that could be fixed by, whenever you finish adding in like the assets and stuff to the scene, that might be completely obvious. But yeah, I think most of the stuff for me is just sort of like keep working, keep adding some secondary motion in there. Any other thoughts, comments? All right. Cool. Color difference. Oh, wait.
Oh, wait, no, that's just the, I just sent you the reference.
Gotcha. So we're going for this one?
Yeah.
Sweet.
I made the car not move because it was just really big pain. I had to animate it while it was going to run the car.
One thing you could actually do for that.
This
Well, I was gonna say apparently. Well, actually, Yes, but there's an easier solution, and I think that would actually be doing. Where are my buttons?
Because I have the entire model parented to the car, so when I move the
Yeah.
car, it just moves the model with it.
Oh, and that totally makes sense. What I was going to say is set up an animation layer just for the car movement. So you can just have your stuff stationary and like deal with things stationary, and then basically turn the car movement on and off.
Oh, okay, I see.
That is actually one of the few times I think display layers would be, or animation layers would be super helpful. So that might be a thing worth looking into, at least by the time the end of stuff comes around. But yeah, so nice. Cool. So any thoughts, comments on this one?
Well, that just looks sad. Yeah. I put like so much into space that stuff later.
I think a lot of this will help once there's another robot in the car and there's sort of like other cues happening. I mean, like, it's definitely obvious, like when he was poking the radio and doing that kind of thing and like turning the windshield wipers on. I think my comments would be kind of the same to the last one. Is like it would be good to get some secondary motion in him.
Yeah, right now I'm like doing this stuff now.
Sweet. But yeah, and then maybe for every few things, maybe work on the timing of stuff a little bit. Some things, like when he moves this arm, at one point it feels like a tiny bit slow. And the other thing that might be kind of funny, just to add a little bit of sort of personality to the guy, is particularly like when he's going to turn on the music. I think the first time you can do a thing where he's like, haha, like I know this is going to annoy the other guy, and do like do I want to do and then like have him poke it or something like that. Give his hand as much personality as possible, which sounds really dumb, but you know what I'm saying. But yeah, and it looks like the ground is like lumpier and stuff, so that's nice. Yeah, sweet. I think that definitely helps sort of integrate it. Anyone else have any thoughts, comments on this? Cool. But yeah, I think a lot is just kind of like keep working, keep getting stuff in. My sad water demo. We have an environment sculpt.
That's just for the actual hills I put in.
Oh, gotcha, cool. Cool. All right. Well, we have a shelf texture version 1. I don't know if the textures are going to come in, but we can try. Ah, literal shelf. Oh, cool. So I have no textures in this, but here is a workbench with some things. Whose thing is this? I feel like this is like the one person. Who's what where?
I had textures, but I didn't put the file in, so I don't think it'll work.
No, and that's fine. Maybe next time, like chuck in some renders or something if you could.
I forgot.
It's all good. I like the little string. I don't know why. I just find that funny. One thing that would be really, and this is like me just being a little bit obsessed with this like particular type of chain. You know those like little chains with like little balls on them? I don't see them. It's possible, like maybe. Oh God. Oh no, they're hidden. The string balls are all hidden. You do have hundreds of string balls. Amazing. That's funny. I was actually going to say, so I have 2 dumb suggestions. I'm not saying you need to change this, especially if it's a static object. If you ever wanted to do this in the future, you could conceivably make a rig for this so it would actually move naturally and drive it like with a curve. Alternately, you could populate these with MASH or like use a wire deformer so that it would just sort of like bend all of the little string pieces at once. Which is again probably over convoluted, but it is a thing if you're ever really bored and just like want to make a functional little chain link fence thing. How did you populate? Did you do this manually or with like a duplicate special?
I did manually.
Oh my God.
But like, I calculated the distance between each one, so I just
Okay.
So it wasn't that hard.
There is totally an easier way to do that if you're ever trying to do that. So take your object and figure out like which axis you need to move it, how much, pretty much like you already did. If you do edit duplicate special, pop open the settings for this. You can translate this down like -0.5, and you can do that however many times you want. So like if I set this to like 20 and hit apply, it'll auto-populate little strings, just like in a straight line. You can also do a thing if you're so inclined where if you set this to instance, it'll populate the strings, but if you change one of the shapes of them, it'll change all of them. If you ever, again, just need to like scale them a little bit differently or something like that, it might make your life a little bit easier. And then just weird tidbit with instancing while I'm here. Sometimes instances do not export well, or if you ever decide, hey, I actually don't want these to be instances anymore, just grab the objects and do modify, convert instance to object, and it'll get rid of the instance, so if you can modify these individually without needing to worry about, oh my god, it'll modify them individually without messing with the other ones. But yeah, duplicate special is really great for like laying tiles and doing weird stuff like that. Cool. All right, so that was a random tangent, but yeah, I mean, I think all your models and stuff are like pretty nice. I guess probably won't spend a whole lot of time on this since there's no textures. But do you have any other like random questions, etc. with this, or?
Not with this. I have another sheet.
Excellent. Spiderbot bind. Ew. Okay, what was your question?
I can't get the IK to work on bullets. Like I put one in and it didn't bend.
Interesting. So is there one in here now, or?
No.
Okay.
At least it's fully like FK.
Gotcha. Okay. I mean, you should, as long as it's like a rotation plane solver, you should be good to go through and just pop a handle in. Oh, that's fun. Question mark.
Yeah, that's what it is. That's what happened.
Interesting. Reset tool. That's really weird. Oh, you can turn on sticky. Interesting. Yeah, off the top of my head, I've never seen it automatically straighten stuff like that. If you send me an email, I can look into that, because it seems like there's probably just like one stupid setting somewhere that's like checked and shouldn't be, or something strange.
Could it be because the way the arrows they're at like a diagonal?
That actually shouldn't matter. The only thing that I can think of that maybe would be causing this is I'm just kill all the constraints on this, is maybe the fact that the joints have rotations on them. So I'm thinking like if these, okay. So I think what it was doing when you put the IK handle on, it was setting all the joint rotations maybe back to 0. I could be completely wrong here. But my theory is like these have rotations as well, so if I did that, it's not actually 0, but it's trying to like snap it back to something that's more 0. Now I'm just guessing. Yeah, can you send me this file, or like if you haven't made a note in your journal, because that's weird and should not be doing that. You can definitely make IK handles with multiple joints, because I've done it before. This is just behaving very oddly. Cool. So I guess apart from that, did you have any issues with this, or?
No, that's the end of that.
Cool.
As far as I know.
Fair enough. That is definitely how a leg should bend. All right, cool. I think that was all the stuff I downloaded. Did I miss anybody's stuff? Okay, cool. Well, if that is the case, let's do like a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back and I will